Deputy Eugene Murphy to the Minister for Transport, Tourism and Sport. The excessive cost of insuring new entrants into the wheelchair accessible taxi industry, given that no insurance companies will provide a quote, and the ongoing issues with wheelchair users being able to access bus and coaches in rural Ireland due to lack of wheelchair accessible bus stop. The Deputy has 4 minutes to make an initial statement.
And Minister, I really do appreciate that you're in the House this evening to listen to the issue I'm raising and give me a reply, because I know you have an extremely busy schedule on those days. I also want to put on the record of the House, I'm not bringing this up to have a go at the government in any way, but because we really do need to tackle the insurance business, and you know that yourself. Now, we had a major discussion in this House recently over the cost of motor insurance in particular. And I think there was widespread agreement with the motion brought forward by Deputy McGrath that something needed to be done. Indeed, the government didn't oppose it. Recently, I was contacted by a constituent who had a serious problem gaining an insurance quotation for a new wheelchair accessible taxi. Last December, Minister, he was quoted €1,250. He went ahead and he applied for a grant scheme that is made available by the government to enable him to enter the business and provide a very badly needed wheelchair accessible taxi in the Roscommon-Leitrim area. He recently tried to gain insurance after being granted the PSV licence and found that there was no insurance company in this country, willing to insure a new wheelchair accessible taxi or new PSV licence holder. One of those companies, Minister, and I'm not going to name the company, I am told, is the sponsor of the Irish Paralympic team, which even makes this story worse. And we have that company not willing to quote for a new wheelchair accessible taxi. I think it's important that I point out to you that the gentleman in question has an impeccable driving record, no blemish whatsoever. His history is second to none. Now, I have spoken to the Irish Wheelchair Association in this regard, and they have confirmed to me that the problem of lack of insurance is causing untold hardship to wheelchair users. My constituent actually contacted the Irish Insurance Federation, and with the help of our own constituency office, literally forced an insurance provider to give him a quotation. What was the quotation? After a lot of effort to get it, the quotation, I remember back in December 2015, the man was quoted €1,250. The quotation at this stage was €12,100. So great that the man could only pay it on monthly instalments. The Wheelchair Association have told me that there's 30% less accessible taxis on the road due to the untenable insurance cost. Now, on the one hand, we're giving a grant for people to enter the wheelchair accessible taxi business and help giving a better service to wheelchair users. But on the other hand, we are letting insurance companies away without providing insurance to the taxis that are so badly needed. And just while we were investigating this, which I know is a side issue, but Éireann have invested quite considerably in wheelchair accessible buses. But I found outside Dublin, there is no wheelchair accessible bus stop. Now, I do appreciate, Minister, your office has given me a comprehensive answer back on that part of the issue. But the main issue here is the scandalous situation in relation to the way our insurance companies are carrying on. And by the way, I'm told recently that the claims issue has reduced considerably over the last year or so. So the claims issue shouldn't be a big issue. So I await your reply, and thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister Shane Ross. 4 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Cancun, and thank you to Deputy Murphy for raising this very important issue. And I think, just to say, first of all, it's very useful to get specifics the way you've presented it to us. To be honest, I share your view of the insurance industry, which I think I share it. If your view, the view I take from you is correct, that it is inexplicable how they're behaving in certain areas and how they're putting up premiums for reasons which are not quite apparent and are offering reasons which appear to be less than convincing for doing this. And I think that it's very, very helpful to talk in specifics like that. And I'm not sure whether you were talking about the same person with the same, at the 1,250, going from 12,000, going straight to 12,000. But if that's the case, it's absolutely outrageous. And let me assure you that I know there's a task force looking at it, but we in our Department of Transport, because this is basically a finance matter, are looking at it as well, consequent to a meeting. The Minister for Justice and I are also in planning to meet Insurance Ireland and the insurance industry to challenge them on issues like that. And maybe I'd be very happy to bring that along to our first meeting if you give me the example, because it's such a stunning multiple of 10 times that it's really something which we could challenge them with. And if we can use the name and the example, I'd be grateful. If we can't, we'll just use the example. But I don't doubt your bona fides at all, and I think it's very useful to get something quite so personal and obvious, and obviously unjustifiable. You can't possibly justify putting up insurance premiums, whatever has happened in the meantime, by 10 times in such short a period. Let me just first address the motor insurance industry, which is affecting all drivers and having a particular impact in the taxi and hackney market. The Deputy will be aware that the Minister for Finance has established a task force to review policy in the insurance sector. As part of its work, the task force is examining the factors which have led to a significant increase in motor insurance costs in recent times and will be recommending steps to influence the situation. The Deputy may also be aware that Insurance Ireland operates a declined cases agreement and that the Central Bank requires all motor insurance in Ireland to sign up to this agreement as part of their authorisation process for running an insurance business. Insurance Ireland also operates a free insurance information service for people who have queries or difficulties about obtaining insurance. If someone cannot get a motor insurance quotation or feels that the premium proposed or the terms are so excessive that it amounts to a refusal to give them motor insurance, they should contact Insurance Ireland. I don't know whether they did in this case or not, but it would be interesting to know what happened if they did. Because obviously this is a case of charging so much that it's akin to refusing insurance. The National Transport Authority, NTA, as the statutory regulator of the taxi and hackney industry, is aware that the rising costs of motor insurance for drivers generally are also affecting the taxi hackney industry. There are reports of large increases for existing policyholders and significant difficulties in obtaining insurance for new operators. The NTA understands some insurance companies are seeking a number of years' experience as a driver of small public service vehicles as a policy condition, which creates a major impediment for new entrants. In addition, the information available to the NTA suggests that quotations for new policies where available can be several thousand euros. According to the NTA, the issue doesn't relate to the vehicle type, but relates instead to new drivers who wish to enter the industry. Because practically all new taxi or hackney licences are issued for wheelchair-accessible vehicles, most intending new operators will be looking to insure a wheelchair-accessible vehicle. The number of companies providing insurance to the taxi industry in Ireland is low and is less than existed some years ago. A UK entity commenced issuing insurance policies in the taxi area earlier this month on a pilot basis, and this is a welcome development as it will add competition into this market and provide an additional insurance option. I suspect that's on a very small scale at the moment, but I don't know. The implications of the current insurance difficulties are of concern. The state has invested in a grant scheme to support more wheelchair-accessible vehicles in the fleet, so the difficulty experienced by new operators in obtaining insurance is very unhelpful. I'll finish off. Can I go on?
Half a minute,
okay.
Minister, because we're over time.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'll do half a minute. I welcome the confirmation by my colleague, the Minister of State at the Department of Finance, Owen Murphy TD, during a Dáil debate on a private member's motion in June, that the issue of motor insurance for taxi and hackney drivers would be addressed by the task force. That task force will carry out its work in consultation with bodies such as the Central Bank, relevant departments and other stakeholders. My department has arranged for the NTA to provide all relevant information on the taxi sector and assistance to the task force in its works.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy, 2 minutes.
Well, look, Minister, I welcome your honest and frank answer here this evening, and I also welcome the use of your word challenge to the insurance industry, because I think surely that is what we need. You are correct. I will repeat it for you again. The client who was quoted €1,250 in December 2015 for the wheelchair accessible taxi was the same guy who a few weeks ago was then quoted, after serious pressure from the Irish Insurance Federation, I can tell you, €12,100, and I will have no difficulty in handing over this to you to use at whatever meetings you will be attending in relation to this. Look, just to repeat what was said on every side of the House when this debate came up in recent weeks, we have an enormous difficulty with the insurance business. You know this yourself. I'm sure you have constituents being quoted outrageous figures for insurance. Young people, in general, go through a very rigid test in this country. They have to do their theory, they have to do their driving lessons, and then they have to sit their test. And before they ever have an offence, they're being quoted €4,000, €5,000, €6,000 to insure a vehicle. It's outrageous for people that doesn't have a blemish on their record, and that is something that should be challenged as well. Also, as I said, the wheelchair accessible taxi insurance business is being really badly hit. So I've no doubt that you will pick up this, that you will fight it, that you will seek changes. But I suppose in one respect, the Motor Advisory Insurance Board that was there did do a pretty good job, and maybe when we get this debated, that a situation will arise that maybe we could get that board back in place. But we need to do something with the insurance companies. In my view, they're out of control. I mean, just to take in relation to the wheelchair accessible, to think that one of those companies, one of those insurance companies, is the sponsor of the Paralympics, and they still won't give a quotation to a wheelchair accessible taxi. I think it's outrageous. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy. Tara.
The Deputy has pointed out a very interesting second example. It's a very telling one. If they're the sponsors, it's quite extraordinary, and it's a good discovery. And I'm not quite sure what we can actually do with that except publicise it and ask them a question about how the inconsistency in their position, which is obviously true. Yeah, I'll take that from you, if I may, or you send it to me, and I'll certainly use it because it's such a stunning example. And you know, the insurance industry does give plenty of reasons why they put premiums up so much. A large number of them look to me like camouflage, I have to say, and I think it is imperative that's why the government did set up a task force, but it's imperative that we get to the bottom of this and find the real reasons and what they are, because they do seem to be confusing, and nobody's been able to put their finger on one reason and say this is it, which makes one very suspicious that there is something not particularly acceptable going on. I'd just like to address the Deputy asked about accessible bus stops as well, because I've only got a minute late. Accessibility improvements to public transport services are being advanced in the context of my department's sectoral plan under the Disability Act 2005, Transport Access for All. I understand the Deputy's point about the need to increase the number of accessible bus stops on the network, particularly in rural areas, and I think it's a fair point. You know, the accessibility is far better in the cities than it is in rural areas, and I think that we're going to have to address that gap. This is something which the NTA and Bus Éireann are working on to deliver now that a very high proportion of the bus fleet itself has been made accessible. During 2016, the NTA is beginning the installation of wheelchair accessible bus stops across the Bus Éireann network. The long-term objective is to install a wheelchair accessible bus stop in every town in the state. The NTA is rolling this out on a route-by-route basis. The first routes are Bus Éireann routes 30, Donegal to Dublin-Donegal, and 32, Dublin to Letterkenny. More generally, on the public transport accessibility, there has been considerable progress in upgrading the infrastructure and facilities, including full accessibility is built into all new public transport infrastructure projects. 100% of the Dublin bus fleet is wheelchair accessible. 100% of the Bus Éireann city fleet is wheelchair accessible. Approximately 80% of Bus Éireann PSO coaches are wheelchair accessible by lift, and this will increase as the coach fleet is replaced. And finally, 79 of the 143 railway stations have received accessibility upgrades, with ongoing work at 4 stations and a programme to improve accessibility across a further 54 stations.
Thank you, Minister.
Thank you.